Good morning. Welcome back to another edition of Studio C70 and our student candidate interviews. This morning, we are very excited to have Will Braveman, who is a candidate for the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas on the November 4th election coming up in 13 days, if my math is right. And he'll be interviewed today by seniors from Mr. Pomalis's AP Government and Politics class at GW Carver High School. Thank you very much, Mr. Braveman, for being here. Thank you very much, Mr. Pomalis and your students for coming up with the questions. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Morales. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Braveman, for being here. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you. We're just going to kick it off with some questions, unless there was something you wanted to start off with in any way.
Well, why don't I just tell you like 2 minutes about myself and my background and kind of how I got to where I am now, maybe to help you guys understand how to become a lawyer, how to become a judge, and all that. I'll take about 3 minutes here, and then we'll go right into the questions. So I'm born and raised in Philly, and when I came back from college, I went to Temple Law School. Prior to going to Temple Law School, I got a job in a large law firm as a paralegal, which kind of, for me, was really good to see the environment of a law firm, because I learned that I didn't want to work in a law firm. So that even sometimes when you get a bad job or a job where you're like, geez, I'm not enjoying this atmosphere, it can be of value because you know that that's something you don't want. So I went to law school, and when I was in law school, I got involved in a few different organizations. Temple Legal Aid, which provides legal aid to mostly abused women in family court proceedings. And also I started a group called Student Public Interest Network to give foundation money to students for jobs in public interest sector law positions. Public interest sector law positions are like if you're working for the government or if you're working for a service that provides legal aid to low-income families, things like that. Things that, I'll put it like this, you sleep well when you do your job. You know you're doing a good thing. So when I left the Temple Law School, I then went to clerk for a judge for two different judges in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas, where I'm going to be a judge soon. And then I went to the City of Philadelphia's Law Department, which is a government agency. So I was a government attorney for 12 years working for the City of Philadelphia's Law Department for their child welfare system, for their labor and employment systems. And then I went into a small firm that had 3 attorneys in it, not a big firm. And my boss subcontracted me to do all of his union work. And then for the last 16 years, I've been a union attorney, representing employees only in discrimination cases, in termination cases, and things of that nature. I also serve as defense counsel in mental health court, something I did for the city's law department on the other side. What that means is I help people who need mental health services. Let me just say at the outset that throughout my career, at every stage of applying to law school, of being in law school, of taking the bar exam, of trying to become a judge, trying to get a job, imposter syndrome is real. Okay, imposter syndrome. All right, and I want to take 30 seconds to explain that to you because it's so important for you to understand. At every stage of your life, you will have doubt about your ability to keep up with people. But you guys are all in the AP class, so I know you can do it. All right, it's hard to understand anything AP. Okay, but at every single stage, there's always going to be some people who have been smarter than me, always some people who have made more money than me, always some people who seem happier than I do. And the toxicity of social media has increased imposter syndrome exponentially. Okay, I'm not saying get off social media. I think dialing it back is a good thing. But I'm saying when you're on it and when you're scrolling, don't kid yourself that you're not good enough, okay? There's a very famous author named Scott Turow who wrote a bunch of books that became made into movies, many of which you've probably heard of. And he wrote a book in his first year of law school, a nonfiction book. And the whole theme of the book was he felt like an imposter. And the dude was at Harvard Law. Okay? So if you're at Harvard Law feeling like an imposter, you know, I mean, that just goes to show you it pervades every area of your life. So I'm just saying, there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't do. And there's nothing that when you do it, you won't have doubt. And the secret of getting through, the secret to the people that get through is that they just keep it moving. They just keep going. Every environment of employers has someone who's toxic, someone who's going to be up in your face and you know, talking smack and problematic. And just, you know, let them do their thing, and that's between A and B, you know. So just see yourself right out of that. So anyway, that's me. That's who I am. That's my little speech on imposter syndrome. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you. Not yet. All right, number 2.
Oh wait, actually, let me go after Jonah.
Cool. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jonah, and then yes.
I'm Jonah. Yeah. My question, like introduce myself. What do you?
It's cool.
Okay. So as someone who's like running for judge, I'm curious like what your thoughts are on the fact that we elect judges. And like what some of the pros and cons would be of electing judges rather than appointing them.
My thought is it's bad, to be blunt. The major con is that when you elect judges, you subject them to political pressures of going around and meeting people and doing the things that politicians have to do, right? And then, you know, once you become a judge, you're supposed to be totally isolated from political pressures, but you've made all of these relationships, right? So how do you just shut off the faucet? It's hard, right? I mean, I intend to do it. And if anyone were to pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, listen, you know, it's your old buddy from such and such a place, I got a person coming before you, I would hang up the phone very quick and report it, you know. And that's actually something, a fact pattern that's going on right now in the Court of Common Pleas that a judge got disciplined for. Also the cons are that when you elect judges, elections cost money. You have to raise money, and the people who donate the money are a lot of the lawyers who come before the judges. So that's a system that for obvious reasons, has a lot of potential bias baked into it, okay? And that's problematic. And the way that you, as a judge, kind of deal with that is if a person who's donated to your campaign comes before you, you have to disclose to all the parties, listen, this person donated to me, and then you have to make a statement of, do you think you can be fair or not? You have to give the parties a chance to ask that you remove yourself from the case, which is called being recused. And that's how that works. The only good thing about, in my view anyway, I mean, I guess there are a few, but the main good thing about elected judges versus merit selection. So merit selection is how it works in federal court. My grandfather's a federal judge. So they found him, and, you know, he got appointed, and based on his merit, and he became a federal judge, right? That's a better system, okay? It has political pressures, by the way. Don't think that it doesn't, right? Because when you get appointed for merit, a lot of that is who you know and your connections. So there are political aspects to merit and to elected judges. But here's the one thing that I liked about being an elected, going through the process of being elected. When you go through the process of being elected, it requires you to go to all of the wards and to speak to them and to meet the people and to see the neighborhoods and to see the really difficult urban blight and poverty in which people are living throughout our city. And it is certainly eye-opening to me and to many of the candidates who haven't lived in that kind of poverty, haven't experienced those kinds of conditions. And I think that it's very important that our judges see what's actually going on the streets, right? People who are appointed through merit selection, I mean, I don't want to be negative about it, but they've lived in the bubble of merit selection because they haven't been forced to go out and see the things that we see, okay? That's certainly impressed upon me the seriousness of the responsibilities that I'm getting ready to assume, because I want to help people make people's lives better. I want to treat people fairly, with dignity, with equity. No one should have to live like that. And to the extent that a case comes before a judge and we can help them get out of that's something that I want to make sure that I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good question.
Hi, I'm Kimani. And my question for you is what qualities do you think like makes the most effective attorneys that come before you like in court?
What qualities? Okay. Number one, hard work and preparation. There is no substitute for knowing your case, for interviewing the witnesses, for studying things. I mean, just like school, right? There's no substitute for like doing the work, for reading the work that you're assigned when you go to take that test. Like, there's no way to pass that test unless you're prepared for the test. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is being an effective communicator in court, being a good public speaker. I have a tendency, I've been, told probably 10,000 times in my life to ramble on, and that's not a good thing, right? When you're in court and when you're presenting a case, you really have to keep things short and sweet. Let me give you, just right off the top, two really good tools, which I call tools for your toolbox, because I do train people on public speaking, on presenting as a witness in court. Number one, you want to make a list. Like I just said, I'm going to give you a couple of tools. So one would be make a list at the outset of, I'm going to tell you two things. I'm going to tell you three things. And that really focuses the listener as you move through them. And then number two, use short words, short sentences. My judge that I clerked for told me to watch 3 lawyers. And then as I watched them, I then introduced myself to them. And I think, a third thing that you can do is network, right? As a lawyer, you really want to get into spaces where you're meeting people who are at the top of their profession, okay? If you hang around with people who are at the bottom of their profession, you'll be at the bottom of your profession. If you hang around with people who are at the top of their profession, you'll learn what they're doing, you'll see what they're doing, and then you're going to have more tools to ascend to the top of your profession. So, like, for example, the Philadelphia Bar Association is a place where a lot of the top publicly conscious attorneys gather and exchange ideas. So I go to those, I network, I do things like that. Those are just, I think, a few tips of what makes an effective attorney. When I went to watch those 3 attorneys and I asked them, hey, what's your secret? And by the way, I'm still watching these attorneys, and 2 of them have law schools named after them, Temple and Drexel. And I went to, Tom Klein and Jim Beasley, whose Temple's named after, and I was like, what's your secret? And they were like, one guy said to me, and I'm not saying you should go to a bar, but these are his words, not mine. He said, I never use any words that I wouldn't use at a bar having a drink with a friend, meaning short sentences and plain language are really things that juries relate to and that other attorneys relate to, okay? Versus long, complicated, people think that when you're a lawyer, you're going to put on that white wig and use SAT words that no one's ever heard of. And they think that being a lawyer means, speaking very formally and eloquently with, loquacious words that no one understands. That's not what it is. It's short, plain sentences, so yeah, that's what I think makes an effective attorney. And just being reasonable. being reasonable too. You know, you don't want to ask for $10 million if you know you have a $500,000 case. You're going to get laughed out of the room.
Thank you.
Sure. Good questions. Like these questions. Okay, someone is ready. She's
My
got her
name-
laptop.
My name's Isabella, and my question was, what was the most influential moment in your career that sparked a change or gave you a new realization?
Okay. When I was in mental health court as a solicitor representing the county, asking that people be committed to mental health court, the judge. So just to explain what that means, I'm asking that someone goes into a mental health facility. It's a very serious thing where they're involuntarily committed because they have a mental illness. And so the judge came up to me and said, "Mr. Braveman, your witness is outside in a tree." I said, "What do you mean my witness is in a tree outside?" She said, "Yeah, up in the tree." I said, "What do you mean, like up in the tree?" She said, "Mr. Braveman, what don't you understand? The tree has a V 6 feet off the ground. Your witness, he climbed up in the tree." "I don't know." I said, "Well, what's he doing?" She said, "He's smoking a cigarette." I said, "Well, maybe he's nervous. He's trying to relax. I don't know." You know, I knew that the judge was a cigarette smoker. I was trying to kind of play it off because this is my witness, right, who has to be credible. So we go into court. And I prep him as a witness. I said, "Why are you here trying to commit your uncle?" So he's the witness saying that his uncle attacked him, right? And he says, my uncle hit me with a death blow." I said, "What?" He said, "He hit me with a death blow." I said, "Well, what's a death blow?" He said, "He was trained in the military. I was trained in the military. He raised his knuckle. He tried to strike me to the temple. He hit me with a death blow." And I was like, so I asked him a few more questions. And then that kind of settled in my mind. I said, "Well, if you were asleep, how did you know he raised his knuckle?" And his answer was, "Man, I know what a death blow feels like." And at that point, I thought he was lying. Okay. So I called up my supervisor. I said, "Lynn," my supervisor was Linda Moore. I said, "Lynn, I'm a little worried that this guy is lying, and I don't know if I can present his testimony. Lawyers have a rule. You can't present false testimony. You're not allowed to present testimony you know to be false." And she said, "Are you 100% sure?" I said, "No, I'm not 100% sure he's lying. I just don't know." Okay. So she said, "Go ahead and present his story. Let the judge decide. That's their job. Your job is to just present what he says. If you're not sure, there's nothing saying you can't present testimony if you're not sure. Just present his testimony." I say to him, before we walk in, I said to him, "Sir, you might not want to say death blow. That sounds a little odd. You might just want to talk about how you raised his knuckle." So we get in. It's a minute into his testimony. He said death blow 3 times already, okay? Ignored what I said, of course. We get into the room, and it's a conference table. And I said, "And what happened next?" He leans back. This is a conference table. There's a judge about 4 feet away from where he's sitting. And he kicks his foot up over the top level of the table. He kicks his foot. And it comes about maybe 2 feet from the judge's face. And she actually leans back. And he says, "I kicked him up off me." I said, "What happened next?" He said, he fell back into the closet. He got a knife that was on the shelf. He came at me with the knife, at which point my Rottweiler intervened and jumped up and knocked the knife out of his hand. Then I called the hospital. They came and got him, right? So he tells this crazy story, right? Some details of which he didn't even tell me when we were prepping. So I was really concerned that he was not telling the truth. So the public defender said, "Isn't it, sir, true you deal drugs out of the house?" And I said, "Objection, relevance. It's got nothing to do with this case." He says, "Yes, it does. It's his motive to lie. He wanted to get his uncle out of the house." So he made up this whole crazy story about a death blow and a Rin Tin Tin jumping up and knocking a knife out of his hand, and this movie situation. It's just making no sense. This is absurd, and this is his motive to lie. The judge says, "Okay, well, I'll allow the question." So, he asked the question, and then an answer was given, and it comes to closing arguments, and the public defender says, "This is the worst example of a situation of abuse of the process, made up this lie about his uncle, and now he's dealing drugs out of his uncle's house." And he said, and the judge looked at me and said, Mr. Braveman, you know, what's your response on closing argument? And you know what my response was? What do you think my response was? Just out of curiosity, what do you think my response was?
I'm not sure.
You're not.
Wait, you're cutting out. You're cutting out. You're cutting out.
Okay. Can you now?
It's getting better.
Oh, hang on.
All right. It's better now.
All right, it's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's better. All right, yeah. On a hotspot, my phone rang. Maybe that was it. All right, so here's what I said. I said no argument. I let it go because it was the right thing to do, because I believed him, because I thought this guy was dealing drugs out of his uncle's house. And here's why that's responsive to your question. Here's why.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pivotal moment in my career, because what I realized in that moment was doing the right thing is important. It's important, you know. People think that once lawyers become lawyers, they always have to do whatever their client wants, and you know, it could be doing the devil's work. You know, it could be the wrong thing. And what I'm here to tell you is there is a way, if you want to be a lawyer, that you can practice law with a conscience, go to sleep at night, feel good about what you do. There are lots of public interest jobs out there. I encourage you all to explore them. And in that moment, and also, excuse me, it taught me a little bit about the rules that relate to candor to the court, you know. So that was pivotal for me, because it reinforced, it was like a line that I knew I can't cross that line. I just can't, I can't do it, because it's just not right.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
question. All right, good question. That's my best story. I don't have any stories like that, but that's my best story.
Sure. Well, one more quick last one, if that's okay with you, Mr. Braveman.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, my name is Jennifer, and my question is, has there ever been a case that you had to handle that has significantly shaped the way you approach justice or changed the ways of your decision making?
Okay. Well, the story that I just told is illustrative of that as well. But so I worked pro bono, which means for free, on a case that was involving gerrymandering. Do you guys know what gerrymandering is?
Yeah,
They do.
Okay. Perfect. Gerrymandering is messed up. Okay. And it takes away the power to vote from primarily people who don't have money, people of color, and it's really messed up. So I worked on an anti-gerrymandering case for free in federal court, and we didn't win, but the Public Interest Law Center came and watched our case and learned about the mistakes that we made, and then they handled the exact same case a couple months later, and then they won.
Nice.
So we like to think that we got the football down to the 30-yard line, and then they did the brotherly, sisterly shove into the end zone after we got it down there. And I'm very proud of that. The thing that I want to also stress about that case is we were new to the process, and imposter syndrome was real. We didn't know about the law surrounding gerrymandering law. We were figuring it out as we went. My colleague, rest in peace, Alice Ballard, Harvard lawyer, she was lead counsel, and she did an amazing job. And I'm convinced we had the law right. But at the time, we were like, wow, this is really hard. Defense counsel, this is crazy. Defense counsel travels the country defending gerrymandering cases exclusively. They are experts in gerrymandering because that's all that they do. But it is saddening, disheartening to me that there are a group of people traveling the country defending gerrymandering. It's crazy. And I tell you that story to hopefully ignite a fire in you of how bad things are getting, where we need young people who want to do good in the world to get out there and do the kinds of things that are needed to combat that very disturbing kind of conduct. All right, people are getting up. I guess we're done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate the
welcome.
time.
Thank you
Listen,
very much, everyone. Mr.
Um,
Pinales, I know your class has to go. Really appreciate you joining us, Mr. Braveman. Election day is November 4th, for those of you watching the live stream. Really appreciate your time, and good luck, Mr. Braveman, in the election.
Yeah, Mr. Pomelis, if any of your
Yes.
students, if any of your students wanted to do an unpaid summer internship with me next summer when I'm a judge, you have a is this still being recorded and streamed?
I will stop the recording now. And
Okay.
all
Because I'm
right,
just
thank
gonna,
you all.
yeah, I'm